my ex called me fat he didn't know. The Mafia boss was listening. Bradley's finger was still pointed at Elena when two Moretti guards caught his arms. The ballroom had gone silent. Elena stood in an emerald satin gown, one hand gripping the lapel of the tattooed man who had caught her before she hit the marble floor. Luca Moretti's arm circled her waist, but he did not pull her closer. He bent his forehead to hers only long enough to ask, "Can you stand?" She said yes, and told him not to let Bradley leave. Her ex had called her fat, torn away her VIP badge, and tried to drag her out of the gala. He did not know the woman he humiliated had written the crisis system, keeping Luca's foundation alive. When a reporter's call exposed 4 words from a private briefing packet, Elena realized the leak came from inside Luca's family. Before the ballroom doors closed, she would have to prove a blood betrayal and decide whether the man holding her could learn to protect without taking control. Bradley stopped struggling when Elena told the guards not to remove him. The command came out steadier than she felt, and Luca's men obeyed before they looked to him. Luca loosened the arm around her waist the instant her balance returned, but kept one hand open at her side. Black ink climbed from beneath his collar along one side of his throat and touched his temple, making his restraint more dangerous than anger. "Can you stand?" he asked. "Yes." Elena released his lapel and faced the room. Crystal chandeliers burned above white flowers and gold chairs. Every guest who had looked away while Bradley tore the badge from her emerald gown was watching now. Bradley pointed at her as if volume could restore his authority. "She is making a scene because I told her the truth. She spent 6 years hiding behind me. And tonight, she dressed like she belonged at the client table." The guards tightened their grip when he stepped forward. Elena looked at the torn ribbon on the marble floor, then at the cream briefing packet beneath his arm. Her work, his name. "Let him finish," she said. Bradley's confidence returned. "You want everyone to hear this. I want them to hear what you believe about the woman who wrote the donor recovery plan in your hand." A few guests turned toward Bradley's packet. His face changed. Luca noticed. "Did she write it?" Bradley laughed. "She formatted it." Elena did not look at Luca. "Open page 14 and explain the contingency sequence for a donor leak." Bradley held the packet tighter. "This is proprietary agency work. Then you should know what is on page 14. Silence answered. Bradley attacked, the only thing he still thought he controlled. "She turns every room into a test, then acts wounded when people get tired of managing her. She is unstable. Luca, ask anyone at the agency." Luca's eyes dropped to the torn badge. "You removed her access. She was embarrassing the account." "She built the account." Elena corrected him. "I built the crisis architecture. The account belongs to the agency." Luca's phone rang inside his black jacket. He checked the screen, then held it out to her. "Reporter," he said. "Fix this." The contradiction landed harder than Bradley's insult. Luca had stopped her from hitting the floor and put his body between her and the man shouting at her, yet reduced her to the nearest available function when his system was threatened. Elena took the phone because the work had consequences. "Daniel Price." The reporter's voice was calm. "My editor is prepared to run a story at 11:15, linking Moretti Community Foundation money to off-book vendor payments tied to the South Branch docks. I can hold it for 12 minutes. Read me the first paragraph of the statement you received." Daniel hesitated, then read. Elena went still at the second sentence. "Continuity of civic stewardship. 4 harmless words to everyone else. To her, they were a fingerprint. She had created 6 private briefing versions that afternoon, each carrying a different tracer phrase, so any leak could be identified without blaming the wrong employee. Bradley had called the control unnecessary until he needed a polished packet to present. "Do not publish yet," Elena said. "The statement in your hands is not an official release. It is a controlled internal copy." Daniel exhaled. "That sounds like a denial. It is a warning. Publish before I show you the source path. And your paper becomes part of someone else's setup." "A pause. 12 minutes," he said. Elena lowered the phone. Luca asked, "Who received that version? I need the distribution record." "Donor notes, guest credential log, and every packet sent afternoon. No one filters what I see. No one speaks for me. Bradley stays where I can see him." Luca turned to security. "Do it. That is borrowed authority," Elena said. "Enough for 12 minutes. Not the same as mine." Something sharpened in his expression. "Understood." He released Bradley from the guards only after Elena nodded. Bradley rubbed his arms. "You cannot put a client crisis in her hands," because she recognized one phrase. "No," Elena said. "He can, because you are holding a packet you cannot explain." She picked up the torn ribbon, placed it on Bradley's copy, and walked toward the private conference room. Luca followed beside her. The guests parted for him, but their eyes stayed on her. The conference room had become a command center of attorneys, laptops, and expensive men trying not to look afraid. Adriano Moretti, Luca's cousin and the foundation's vice chair, stood at the end of the table. Bradley immediately reclaimed the language of rank. "She should not be here. She is emotional, compromised, and no longer assigned to this account." Luca did not look at him. "You are removed from the response." Adriano stepped forward. "Luca, donors are calling. We need the agency's senior voice." Elena set the phone on the table. "You have had his voice all year. You have had my work." She opened the distribution record. 6 packets had left the archive between 412 and 419 p.m. 1 for Luca. Counsel. Security. Donor relations. Bradley. And Adriano's office. Elena moved through the tracer phrases until the final version appeared. Continuity of civic stewardship. The reporter received the wording assigned to Adriano's copy. Adriano barely reacted, or to anyone who saw it. Correct. The phrase gives us the source file, not the hand that carried it. Bradley seized on the distinction. So, this proves nothing. It proves where we start. Portal activity showed that Bradley's credentials reopened Adriano's packet at 8:39. At opt patruzic, shitrei. An executive override entered the badge system. At opt patruzic, shishase. A duplicate VIP credential was created. At opt cinci zeci shidoi. The packet was exported. Bradley's face lost color. My login was compromised. Maybe, Elena said. That is why the access log supports the packet. It does not replace it. The security chief's tablet sounded. The duplicate badge had entered through the service corridor, crossed catering, stopped near the press alcove, and was moving toward the records office upstairs. Luca moved toward the door. You are coming with me. Elena picked up the laptop and packet history. No, I am leading. He looked at the woman he had caught, protected, and then tried to use. This time he stepped aside before she had to ask. Lead. The service corridor narrowed beyond the ballroom. trading chandeliers for painted concrete. The pulse of music through the walls. Elena moved with the laptop against her ribs. Luca followed beside her instead of in front. A detail she noticed and refused to reward yet. 2 security men took the stairs first. The chief tracked the duplicate badge to the Foundation records office. "Who has clearance?" Elena asked. "Executive staff." "Security." "The vice chair's office." "And agency administrators during events." "Bradley's access." "Adriano's authority." "They're not stealing records," Elena said. "They're planting something. The board will be forced to react to." The office door stood open. A catering jacket lay inside, and a shred bin hummed beneath the desk. Luca motioned for security to enter, but Elena caught his sleeve. "No one touches the papers." "Because of fingerprints," he asked. "Because the wrong page in the right room is more useful than a missing one." After security cleared the space, Elena crouched beside 3 torn donor letters and a board authorization bearing Luca's signature. The signature looked real. The paper did not. "Your official packets use cotton stock with a watermark. This has none. The staple holes are wrong. And the footer code belongs to my agency's draft system." Luca's face went still. Someone printed a false authorization from Bradley's platform and planted it here. Yes. The article creates public panic. This creates legal panic. Adriano appeared in the doorway. His eyes dropped to the page, and recognition arrived before surprise. "That is Luca's signature. It is an image of his signature," Elena said. "The board will not care about paper stock once the story goes live." Luca turned toward him. "How do you know what the board will care about?" Adriano's expression reset. "Because unlike your new assistant, he sit on it, Elena Rose. Then you know, emergency control requires scandal and evidence of fiduciary breach. You are a communications contractor explaining governance to a vice chair. No, I'm explaining audience behavior. Someone is building the exact story your board needs in order to panic on schedule." The security chief's phone vibrated. Price moved publication to 10:55. Elena checked the time. 10:43. The counterfeit page carried the agency's routing code. Bradley had not followed them upstairs. "Seal this room and find him." Adriano smiled faintly. "You think your ex-boyfriend engineered a takeover because he hurt your feelings?" Elena met his gaze. "Bradley had the access. You had the reason." Luca ordered security to move. They found Bradley in a coat room beside an open laptop with a portable drive in hand. "I was securing client files," he said when the guards returned him. "Elena is turning a routine breach into revenge theater." The phrase was familiar enough to make her feel 17 again, apologizing for reactions he had provoked. But the room no longer belonged to his version of her. Elena placed the drive on the table and asked Maya to mirror it. Bradley objected. "She has no authority." Luca answered. "She has mine." Elena looked at him. "Temporary permission is not authority." "Then, tell me what is." "A process no one can revoke because they dislike the answer." Maya loaded the portal activity. "Adopt 30 Shinowa." Bradley's credentials opened Adriano's packet. "Adopt 40 The packet was exported. "Adopt 40 The badge system accepted an executive override. "Adopt 40 The duplicate credential was created. "My login was stolen." Bradley said. "Maybe." Elena replied. That is why the access log is not the proof. She opened the 6 briefing versions. The reporter's copy contained continuity of civic stewardship. Wording found only in Adriano's packet. Adriano folded his hands. Anyone could have photographed it. Correct. The phrase proves the source path, not the hand that carried it. But your office requested a revision at 7:58 using a donor complaint that did not exist until after 9. Elena enlarged the timestamp. You reacted to a crisis before the crisis happened. Bradley turned toward Adriano, panic stripping the polish from his face. You told me it was a vendor review. Adriano did not look at him. Luca did. What did he promise you? Bradley swallowed. Nothing. Elena turned to Maya. Why was my access suspended? At 6:30, Maya glanced at Bradley. He said you were emotionally unstable, and senior leadership would finish the account. Jonah admitted. He issued the duplicate badge after Bradley said, Adriano's office approved a replacement and used the executive override. Bradley pointed at him. He made it. This is on him. Luca's voice went flat. Sit down. Bradley obeyed. Jonah said. A man in a catering jacket collected the credential under the name of a donor who had cancelled. Only Elena. Bradley. Donor relations. And Adriano's office knew. You remember every cancelled guest? Adriano asked. I remember changes that alter risk. Elena turned the laptop so the room could see the version controls. Donor response sequences and escalation notes she had maintained for 6 years under Bradley's approvals. The system is indispensable. I'm simply the only person here who knows how it works, because everyone with a better title was rewarded for not asking. Daniel Price called at 1051. Elena put him on speaker. Your 12 minutes are almost gone. Then listen carefully. The statement you received was a controlled briefing copy issued to one recipient. If you publish it as foundation language, your article becomes part of a manufactured sequence. Daniel paused. Can you prove that? I can prove the source copy and a revision request made before the alleged donor concern existed. Give me until 11/8, and you get the original version history on the record. 11/8, he said, then disconnected. Luca looked at the clock. What do you need? A room without anyone whose packet is compromised. Luca's eyes settled on Adriano. Leave. His cousin's smile disappeared. You are removing the vice chair on the word of a woman, Bradley fired. Luca opened the door. I am protecting the process you keep trying to outrank. Adriano passed Elena slowly. People who make themselves essential are usually shocked by how quickly systems replace them. Elena held his gaze. Only systems designed by men who need everyone else to stay small. After he left, Luca placed the full foundation archive in front of her. For the first time that night, no summary stood between Elena and the truth. Outside the locked room, someone tried the handle twice, then walked away without knocking. The locked room handle went still. Elena did not look toward it. Whoever was outside knows we found the revision request. Luca opened the corridor feed and saw Adriano walking away on his phone. At szapte 5, she opt. His office had asked for a revised packet using a donor concern. No donor had yet expressed. At opt 5, she doi. The same packet language reached Daniel Price. It was panic written in advance, waiting for the room to catch up. He's manufacturing inevitability, Elena said. First, the concern. Then the article. Then the forged authorization. Then The board vote. Each piece makes the next one look responsible. Luca asked whether the article could still be stopped. Not without helping him. If you pressure Daniel to kill it. Adriano says, you intimidated the press. We answer publicly. Preserve every record. And make him commit to the lie before witnesses. Write it. Elena held his gaze. Ask. His jaw tightened. Will you write it? She drafted 4 sentences denying the authorization, preserving access histories, and promising a response before midnight. Luca read it once. Too restrained. That's why it works. He wants rage, because rage looks like guilt. He's trying to take my family. Then, answer like a man with evidence. Not a man who needs everyone to fear him. Luca signed what she wrote. Atunci sprezece nouă. Daniel agreed to label the allegations disputed and include the preservation notice. One sponsor delayed withdrawal. 2 contradictory statements were cancelled. And the phone stopped ringing. My senior team couldn't do that. Elena closed the draft. Your senior team was trained to protect rank. I was trained to protect sequence. The calm lasted 6 minutes. Atunci sprezece, 15. Daniel's article went live. And the foundation secretary announced that 4 board members wanted the emergency vote moved to 1-1-3-5. Adriano had shortened the clock by 10 minutes. Luca reached for his phone. Bring him back. No, Elena said. Let him believe the article worked. He's accelerating the vote. Because he suspects we found the source path. Confront him now, and he changes the story. Let him repeat it where the board can hear. Luca stepped nearer, but stopped before entering her space. And if he has another move, he does. The article creates shame. He still needs financial panic. At 11, 18. The foundation's bank requested confirmation on 3 urgent vendor payments, totaling nearly $8 million. The chief financial officer called them legitimate doc obligations. Elena asked for the approval messages instead of the ledger. Each payment used the same fabricated donor language from Adriano's 758 request to justify bypassing review. Everyone else read the amounts. Elena read the narrative. Freeze only these 3 batches, she said. A full account stop makes the board think the foundation is insolvent. The CFO looked to Luca. Luca said nothing until the man understood. Miss Brooks gave you the instruction. The payments were isolated without touching payroll, grants, or port safety operations. Then, the security chief reported that Bradley's phone received a call after every countermeasure. Adriano was using him to measure their response. Then Bradley is still useful, Luca said. Or scared. Elena replied. Does that matter? It does if you want truth instead of obedience. Luca dismissed everyone except Elena. When the door closed, he asked, You think I don't know the difference? I think fear is easier for you to read. So people around you perform loyalty. I saw Bradley pull you off balance. I caught you, put my men on him, and decided that made me the man in charge of what happened next. Then I put a crisis in your hand and assumed your skill was mine to call. Elena did not rescue him from the admission. Yes, I protected your body and ignored your authority. Yes. He gripped the back of a chair, absorbing an answer no one else would have dared give twice. Tell me what repair looks like. You tell the board I control the evidence presentation. You do not interrupt me. You do not threaten Bradley in my name. If I leave after tonight, no one follows me. Agreed. Put it in writing. Luca Luca wrote the terms on foundation letterhead, signed them, and slid the page across the table. It was accountability with a signature. Before Elena could fold it, Maya rushed in. Bradley's credentials had initiated a remote purge of the agency server. The revision history proving Adriano's office requested the false donor concern would disappear in 7 minutes. Luca reached for his phone. Elena stopped him. No raids. The event production system mirrors every packet before printing. Maya stared at her. Bradley ordered that archive abandoned last month. He ordered me to stop using it. I didn't. Elena opened a folder, buried beneath vendor schedules and gala production notes. 6 packet versions appeared with tracer phrases, access times, and print histories intact. Beneath them sat 6 years of corrected releases, donor warnings, guest risk notes, and crisis plans carrying Elena's initials, where Bradley's client reports carried his name. Luca stared at the archive, as though someone had opened a hidden floor beneath his own house. You kept all of this running after he told you to stop, because the work had consequences when my title didn't. Elena copied Adriano's packet history onto 3 drives, 1 for independent counsel, 1 for the board display, and 1 for herself. When she handed the first to the security chief, he accepted it without looking to Luca. Atunci sprezece douăzeci, și șapte. The board secretary announced 8 minutes until the vote. Atunci sprezece douăzeci, și opt. Adriano's office submitted an emergency request to erase the archive under confidentiality authority. Elena disconnected the source before the command could execute. He knows, she said. Luca's expression hardened. Then the board hears it now. Elena placed her copy inside her clutch. But her phone vibrated before she reached the door. A New York crisis firm had sent the managing director contract she had interviewed for weeks earlier, with relocation support and a car reservation waiting outside. The offer expired at midnight. Elena had enough money to leave Chicago, and enough proof of her work to make Bradley's version of her irrelevant. Luca saw the departure details, but did not ask to hold the phone. From the ballroom, a bell called the emergency session to order. The evidence is yours, he said. The decision is yours. Elena looked at the doors. Then, at the car reservation. First, I stop Adriano from making junior staff pay for what he built. After that, I decide whether any of this deserves me. The bell sounded again, and Elena walked into the ballroom, with Luca half a step behind her. The charity tables had been stripped of flowers and replaced with board folders and voting cards. Bradley sat beside Foundation Counsel. Adriano stood at the head of the table, holding a prepared declaration. Before this board hears from Ms. Brooks, he said, you should understand that she is a contractor whose access was revoked tonight. She created unauthorized tracking language, retained confidential archives, and inserted herself into a crisis after being removed for emotional instability. Luca's voice cut through it. Her access was removed because Bradley needed the only person who understood the system out of his way. Adriano's expression tightened. You are choosing an outside communications specialist over your own family. I am choosing a process that can be verified over a title that expects to be trusted. Luca placed the signed authorization before the chairman. Miss Brooks controls the evidence presentation. No one touch her files, removes her from this room, or speaks over her. The chairman frowned. The bylaws do not recognize that authority. Then recognize the person who stopped 3 compromised payments and preserved the archive. Adriano tried to erase. Bradley gave a bitter laugh. She built clever wording, and now wants everyone to believe she runs the foundation. Elena turned to him. No. I want the people who carry risk to stop being blamed by the people who only carry titles. She did not connect the drive. Before I present anything, Maya Chen and Jonah Ellis receive written protection from retaliation and from any allegation based only on statements by Bradley Hayes or Adriano Moretti. Bradley stood. You do not dictate conditions here. Then you do not receive my evidence. The chairman called it leverage. Elena answered calmly. I have a signed New York contract, relocation funds, and a car waiting outside. I am not trapped here, and I am not asking for money. I will not help one powerful system survive by feeding 2 junior employees to it. Adriano smiled. A threat dressed as principle. Luca's hand flattened against the table. Elena saw it. Don't. His eyes met hers. The hand lifted. She asked for protection. Not punishment. He said, draft it. Independent counsel wrote an order shielding Maya and Jonah from dismissal or referral without outside review. Elena made them add that neither Bradley's nor Adriano's testimony could be sufficient cause. Luca signed first. Only then did she remove the drive from her clutch. Bradley's composure broke. I reopened Adriano's packet because his office requested a revision. I used the override because they said a donor needed replacement access. Adriano remained still. A frightened ex-boyfriend inventing instructions is not proof. Agreed, Elena said. Bradley is not the proof. Adriano's version-controlled packet is. His access explains the route. The packet proves the origin. Adriano glanced at the clock. Sung-ar. Then present it. Elena looked toward the projector and saw the trap. The display still ran through the network controlled by Adriano's office. If she opened the archive there, he could interrupt it and turn a clean chain into a technical dispute. I need an isolated projector. The chairman shook his head. The vote begins at 11:35. Luca asked counsel what lawful delay remained. 1 15-minute recess. Call it. The chairman recessed until 1150. Adriano passed Elena on his way out. You have mistaken temporary attention for power. No, she said. That's why I built something stronger than attention. In the adjoining library. Luca stopped at the threshold until Elena nodded permission for him to enter. On the desk, he placed a full release from Bradley's agency. Certified copies of every archived file carrying Elena's initials, and a written Moretti order prohibiting pursuit or interference if she left. The car outside can take you to New York tonight, he said. Why now? Because if you stay, while I control the exits, your loyalty means nothing. He stepped back. I stopped Bradley and made a spectacle of protecting you. Then I put a crisis in your hand and expected your competence to belong to me because I had intervened. You are saying the right things. Words are cheap when a man still controls the door. He opened it. Take the proof. Take your work. Go to New York. I will face the vote with what you have already shown me. Elena searched his face for a bargain and found none. You could lose the foundation. Yes. Adriano could take the dock contracts. Yes. His voice roughened. But I will not make my collapse your responsibility. Elena folded the release. What happens to Bradley? What he did to you is yours to address. What he did to the foundation goes through counsel. And Adriano, if the vote proceeds before, the board understands the source path. He gains temporary control. Elena nodded. Keep the projector isolated. Do not tell them where I am. She walked out, carrying the archive and the New York contract. Luca did not follow. Atunci 11:36. The car left the hotel. Elena watched Chicago slide past in wet glass, trying to imagine a life where no one knew Bradley's version of her. 7 minutes into the drive, Maya's message arrived. It contained a photograph of a declaration filed during the recess. Bradley and Adriano claimed Maya created the duplicate badge. Jonah altered the packet, and Elena coerced both into preserving a false archive. A second message followed. Outside, counsel and security are here. They say we're being suspended and referred to the police as the people who altered the records. The New York firm had sent final instructions. A furnished apartment, and a direct reporting line to a woman who had interviewed Elena without once treating softness as weakness. The release in her bag made that freedom real. But Adriano had prepared 2 frightened employees to carry the blame after the vote. Trusting Elena would choose safety once she had it, she closed the New York contract, leaned toward the driver, and said, "Turn around." Then she called the one man who had finally given her enough freedom to make returning a choice. The call connected before the car completed the turn. "Tell me you're still leaving," Luca said. His voice held no command, only the strain of a man trying not to turn concern into ownership. "I was." She sent him the photograph of Adriano's declaration. He filed it after signing the protection order. Maya and Jonah are being positioned as the people who built the access path, and he expects the vote to erase every safeguard we put in place. Luca's answer came cold. "I'll send security." "No. Keep counsel with them. No threats. No detentions. And no men surrounding Adriano before I speak." Pause. "Understood." Elena watched the city reverse beyond the window. "I'm not coming back because you need me," she said. "I'm coming back because 2 people with less power are about to be punished for obeying the structure Bradley and Adriano controlled." "Then tell me what you need." "Keep the board in the ballroom. Preserve the vote cards and the declaration. Put counsel beside Maya and Jonah. Isolate the projector from every Foundation network. And don't tell anyone I'm returning." "Why?" "Because Adriano believes the proof just left Chicago." The line quieted. "The choice is yours," Luca said. Elena looked at the signed contract in her bag. "Yes, that's why it matters." The car returned to the hotel at 1151. Elena used the drive to simplify the presentation, not search for new evidence. 6. Version. Pardon. 6 phrase. 1 version-controlled packet containing the reporter's wording and a donor revision created 73 minutes before the concern existed. Bradley's credentials carried the file through the badge system and forged authorization. But the main proof remained Adriano's authenticated packet. Elena reduced the presentation to 3 screens and 1 question. How could Adriano prepare a response to a crisis before anyone reported it? Maya called from counsel's phone. "They're saying my login appears after Bradley's override." "Did you create the second badge?" "No." "Then don't explain more than the truth. Fear makes people add guesses that sound like admissions." Jonah came on next. "They said I could be charged for altering access records. Did you alter them?" "No. I issued a replacement after Bradley used the executive override and said Adriano's office approved it." That is your whole statement. Don't apologize for following a process designed to hide who gave the order. Independent counsel confirmed their protections remained enforceable, even if control changed hands. Elena made him repeat it, while both employees listened. Then she asked Maya, Did Bradley ever tell you why my versions were different? He said you liked making simple things complicated. Elena closed her eyes for 1 second. Tonight, the room learns what that complication protected. Luca waited at the service entrance without guards. He opened the rear door but did not offer his hand until Elena extended hers. The pause told her he remembered every condition she had set. They're reconvening now, he said. Adriano claims the bank will suspend operations if control isn't resolved by midnight. Urgency is the last shelter of a weak lie. They walked through the corridor where Bradley had removed her badge less than 2 hours earlier. A new credential rested on the console with Elena's name and the title, Crisis Authority, printed beneath it. She left it untouched. That role doesn't exist. It can. Not because you invented it in a hallway. Tonight I speak because the facts require it. Not because you loaned me a title. Luca tore the badge in half. Then tell me what it should say when the board is ready to make it real. Nothing, until the authority exists without depending on your mood. Fair. In the library. The isolated projector glowed against a blank wall. Luca had placed the archive, the signed release, and Maya and Jonah's protections in separate folders, exactly as instructed. You didn't open my copy, Elena asked. No. You could have. That isn't the same as having permission. Elena handed him the written terms he had signed. One more condition. When I identify Adriano, you do not decide his consequence in that room. Luca's face hardened. He tried to take everything. And if you turn proof into vengeance, the board remembers your anger. Instead of his betrayal, I want an independent suspension. Preserved records, frozen overrides, and formal review. The system has to survive both of you. He held her gaze, then nodded. Agreed. Through the closed ballroom doors. Adriano's voice carried with practiced calm. He was telling the board Elena had fled because she knew her archive would not survive scrutiny. Bradley added that she had always been ambitious, unstable, and resentful of senior staff. Luca moved toward the handle. Elena stopped him. Before we enter, answer one question. When you put that phone in my hand, what did you see? The truth cost him. A woman I had caught, and then a useful person beside a problem. I treated protection like permission. And now, the person who designed the only honest system in this building, the person I failed before I needed her, the person who can leave after saving us, and whose answer I have no right to buy. Something inside Elena settled into its proper place. Not healed, but no longer available for Bradley to define. Good. Then open the door, stand beside it, and make them listen. Nothing more. Luca obeyed. Every head turned toward him first, because power had trained them to look past women like Elena whenever a more dangerous man entered the room. Luca stepped aside without speaking. Elena walked in alone with one laptop, one sealed drive, and no borrowed title. Maya and Jonah sat beside independent counsel. Bradley's face emptied when he saw her. Adriano smiled, as though her return proved desperation. Ms. Brooks, he said. New York must have reconsidered. Elena placed the laptop at the center of the table. No. Leaving was possible. Returning was my choice. The chairman raised the first voting card. You have 9 minutes before ballots are recorded. Elena connected the isolated projector. 6 nearly identical briefing packets appeared behind her, differing by only one line. Adriano's smile weakened. 9 minutes is more than enough. she said, because this entire takeover depends on one file. Only one person in this room controlled. Elena did not begin with Adriano. She began with the system. 6 private briefing packets left the same production archive between 412 and 419, she said, enlarging the first screen. The facts were identical. One phrase was different in each copy, so a leak could be traced without blaming the wrong employee. Durable civic stewardship. Sustained civic stewardship. Documented civic stewardship. Accountable civic stewardship. Then she stopped on the final version, continuity of civic stewardship. These 4 words appeared only in the packet issued to Adriano Moretti's office. Adriano leaned back. A phrase is not evidence of betrayal. Correct, Elena said. The proof is Adriano's version-controlled packet, the only file containing those words, and the revision created 73 minutes before the crisis existed. She opened the second screen. At 7:50 she opt. Your office requested a revised packet based on a donor complaint that did not exist yet. At 8:40 she unu. That same file was exported through Bradley Hayes's administrator credentials. At 8:40 she 6. The route produced a duplicate VIP badge. At 8:50 she 2. Daniel Price received a false response containing the unique wording in your file. Bradley lifted his head. I said my credentials were compromised. Elena faced him. Your credentials explain the route. They do not explain why Adriano's file prepared for a donor crisis 73 minutes before any donor raised one. She aligned the fabricated concern, the revision request, and the leaked statement in a single column. This takeover did not grow out of panic. The panic was written first. A sponsor representative asked her to repeat the timing. Elena did. Slower. No one looked toward Luca for confirmation. Adriano stood. This board is permitting a contractor to reinterpret documents she retained against policy. The archive was created automatically by the event workflow. Elena said, I preserved it because Bradley ordered source history removed. Bradley's face tightened. She built unauthorized files because she was obsessed with proving she mattered. Elena clicked once. 6 years of corrected releases, donor warnings, access notes, and crisis plans appeared, each carrying her initials before Bradley's approval. This is not a second proof against Adriano. It is why the packet controls can be trusted. The same method operated across every major account. Maya and Jonah watched from counsel's table. Adriano tried again. Any assistant could have photographed my packet. A photograph would not contain the authenticated revision history. I do not supervise every message. Your personal authorization code approved the revision. Codes can be stolen? Then explain why. Before the forged authorization was examined, you said the board would not care about the paper once the article appeared. Only someone who understood both pieces knew they were designed to work together. Foundation counsel leaned forward. That statement should enter the record. Adriano turned toward Luca. You would let an outsider dismantle your family over one file. Luca remained beside the doors. Miss Brooks is showing what you built, he said. Then he fell silent, as she had required. Bradley broke first. I reopened the packet because Adriano's office asked for the revision. I approved the badge request because they said a donor needed replacement access. The room leaned toward him. Adriano looked at him with contempt. A weak man inventing instructions because he wants mercy. Bradley turned toward Elena. You know me. I was cruel, but I never wanted anyone arrested. I never wanted the foundation destroyed. Elena held his gaze. You removed my access after humiliating me because you believed I would still repair whatever you broke. You gave away a system you did not understand. Then prepared Maya and Jonah to carry the blame. You were careless with other people's lives because you assumed yours would always matter more. The chairman asked whether she could prove Adriano personally ordered the duplicate badge. Not beyond the authenticated route. Elena said, I will not pretend the file says more than it does. It proves his office originated the false concern. His controlled packet supplied the leaked language, and his authorization history prepared the crisis before it existed. Bradley's admission and the badge records support that route. Adriano's version-controlled packet is the proof. Her restraint changed the room more than rage could have. She was not asking them to trust her pain. She was asking them to follow a system they had benefited from without seeing. Adriano's composure cracked. You think this makes you powerful? You are a contractor who happened to remember a phrase. Elena looked at the voting cards and sealed folders. Remembering the phrase is not power. Designing the system that made your lie measurable is... The chairman lowered his ballot. One board member pushed his card away. Then another. Foundation Council moved to suspend Adriano's executive access, pending independent review. Adriano objected that only Luca could authorize the lock. Luca did not move. The chairman looked to Elena. What access has to remain active if we freeze the executive accounts? It was the first time anyone in that room asked what the system required before asking who held the highest title. Elena turned to the CFO. Security Chief. And Counsel. Payroll. Grants. And Port Safety remain live under their existing departmental authorities. Communications, archives, and executive deletion privileges freeze now. Security preserves the credential records. Council preserves the vote materials. Each officer carried out the decision inside their own field. Bradley was removed from the account and seated beside outside counsel. Not dragged away for spectacle. Adriano faced Luca. Blood used to mean something to you. Luca's voice stayed quiet. It does. That is why betrayal costs more. He looked toward Elena, but did not claim the victory. The chairman did. The emergency vote is cancelled. Adriano Moretti is suspended as vice chair, pending independent review. This board recognizes Elena Brooks as temporary operational authority over communications and integrity controls until a permanent structure is approved. A chair was moved beside counsel. Not behind Bradley. Not at the edge. At the table, Elena sat only after Maya and Jonah's protections were read aloud. Then the chairman placed the sealed archive before her and asked, "What happens next?" Elena looked at the clock. Next. We make sure no one ever has to become invisible to keep this system honest again. By 12:20. The donors were gone, leaving abandoned glasses and voting cards across the ballroom. Council sealed Adriano's communications, suspended every credential tied to his office, and preserved the forged authorization for outside review. He demanded to speak to Luca privately, invoking blood, history, and the danger of allowing an outsider to humiliate a Moretti before the board. Luca did not move from the doorway. "You were not humiliated," he said. "You were measured." Adriano's gaze cut toward Elena. "By a woman who does not belong here." Elena closed the sealed archive. "By the process you thought no outsider would understand." Security escorted him to council without spectacle. The agency's managing partners joined by video, after Maya forwarded the archived work history. For 6 years, Elena's initials appeared beneath the first versions of every major response, while Bradley's name appeared only on the polished copies delivered to clients. The partners removed him from the account, froze his management authority, and opened a review into the access override and false declaration. Elena, I know I hurt you. I was insecure. I saw how good you were, and I thought, if I made you doubt yourself, you would never realize you could leave me. He mistook the room's silence for permission. I never meant what I said about your body. Elena looked at the man who had once made every mirror feel like a verdict. You meant it when it was useful. You meant it when you thought shame would keep me quiet. You do not get to erase the harm because the method stopped working. She required the agency to issue a written correction, naming her as the architect of the Foundation's crisis controls. Protect Maya and Jonah, and release every file carrying her work. Bradley asked whether that would satisfy her. This is not satisfaction, she said. It is accuracy. At 1 a.m, the board reconvened with a different problem. The scandal had been contained, but the structure that allowed it still existed. The chairman offered Elena a consulting bonus, large enough to sound generous and temporary enough to leave every old hierarchy intact. She declined before he finished explaining it. You do not have a compensation problem. You have an authority problem. The people responsible for preventing failure had no power to stop the people creating it. She placed a one-page structure at the center of the table. The proposed Director of Communications Integrity would hold independent approval authority over crisis statements, direct access to version histories and guest control records, the right to suspend any message or credential tied to a compromised chain, and a permanent seat in operational reviews. The role would hire its own staff, report to the full board rather than one executive, and protect junior employees who raised documented concerns. It would also carry a written right to refuse any order that violated the Integrity Charter without retaliation. One board member failed to hide his doubt. You are proposing a director-level office for someone who has never been allowed to hold a director's title. I am proposing the authority the work has required for years. Approve the structure before you know whether I will take it. She forced them to decide whether the system deserved to survive. Luca said only, vote on the structure. The board approved it. 6-1. Elena crossed out a paragraph, allowing executive monitoring for protection, replaced it with a requirement for her written consent, except during a documented emergency, and added a clause guaranteeing access to her own work and the right to resign without pursuit, pressure, or reputational interference. One more condition, she said. No one is threatened, ruined, or punished in my name without asking what I want. Protection is not permission to control the world around me. Luca signed the change. Agreed. And when I report risk, you ask. You do not command. Then I will ask. Elena signed only after Maya and Jonah received permanent protected roles within the new department, and independent counsel certified the authority in writing. The final vote changed more than her title. The board appointed Elena Interim Director of Communications Integrity for 6 months, with permanent confirmation scheduled after the independent review. The security chief brought Elena the master communications credential and asked which systems could be restored. The same men who had once looked toward Luca before obeying her now waited for her decision first. Restore donor communications and the validated crisis channels, she said. Keep every archive deletion privilege frozen until the review closes. Security and finance retain control of their own systems under the preservation order. The instructions moved without anyone asking Luca to confirm them. A chair remained beside Foundation Council, with Elena's name placed before it. Not assistant. Not contractor. Interim Director of Communications Integrity. The title changed how the room moved around her. Elena did not feel transformed. She felt correctly priced. Luca waited until the board had gone before approaching the table. He kept several feet between them. I caught you when Bradley pulled you off balance. Then stood in front of you, as if my body could settle a wrong. I had not asked you how to address, he said. After that, I treated your skill as something I could summon. I benefited from a system you built while never asking who carried it. Elena did not soften the confession. Yes, the authority approved tonight is not an apology disguised as a promotion. It belongs to the work you proved was already yours. He placed the master credential before her, then stepped back. You can take the role. Take New York, or leave with every record carrying your name. No one follows you. No one closes the door. Elena thought of the signed contract in her bag, and the version of herself who once confused being needed with being valued. I will take the role for 6 months, she said. Probation works both ways. The board will review whether this structure follows the charter. I will review whether you do. Luca's mouth almost curved. Fair. She picked up the credential. And if you ever use my position to overrule my judgment, you leave. No. I overrule yours first. Then I decide whether to leave. This time he smiled. That sounds fairer. Dawn began thinning the darkness beyond the windows as Elena gathered the sealed archive. For the first time that night, the room waited on no crisis, no vote, and no man's permission. It waited on her. 3 weeks later, the Moretti Foundation board met again in daylight. Elena sat beside independent counsel with the master credential at her right hand and the signed New York contract sealed in her bag. She had negotiated a delayed start date before midnight, preserving a real alternative while the outside review finished. Freedom mattered more when it remained available. The review confirmed that Adriano's office originated the fabricated donor concern, authorized the packet revision, approved the duplicate credential, and prepared the emergency declaration before Daniel Price received the leak. Bradley's credentials carried the sequence forward. But the plan began with Adriano and ended with the vote he expected to control. The board removed Adriano as vice chair, barred him from foundation access, referred the forgery and archive destruction attempt to outside authorities, and placed related finances under independent review. Luca requested no family exception. Blood explains the access, he said. It does not excuse the betrayal. Adriano staretat Elena. You are giving your house to a woman who will leave. Elena closed the report. No. He is returning authority to the people keeping the system honest. Whether I stay is separate. Security escorted Adriano out under council's authority. Bradley appeared by video from the agency. The partners had terminated him for falsifying records, misusing administrator access, retaliating against junior staff, and presenting Elena's work as his own. I wanted to apologize without asking you for anything, he said. Then apologize. Bradley swallowed. I used your body, your loyalty, and your feelings for me to keep you uncertain. I called your work support when I needed it, and instability when you challenged me. I knew the insult would hurt. I'm sorry. Elena did not help him. Your apology is accurate. That does not make it restorative. She required a permanent release of every claim to her systems and a sworn account of each time he reassigned her work. He signed. Will you ever forgive me? Forgiveness is not another service you get to request from me. She ended the call. Maya and Jonah sat behind her with protected credentials. The board reviewed the charter Elena had demanded. Her department controlled version history, crisis approvals, credential risk, review, and protected reporting. Any executive, including Luca, could be locked out after documented findings and confirmation from independent counsel. Elena had appointed Maya Senior Access Coordinator, Jonah Communications Records Manager, and an outside compliance analyst. The chairman asked whether she accepted the permanent appointment. Luca gave no sign of what answer would please him. I accept the authority, Elena said. Subject to the refusal, resignation, and non-interference clauses already approved. My office reports to the full board. No private order outranks the charter. The vote passed. The chairman slid a new credential toward her. Director of Communications Integrity. Elena picked it up. The structure had been approved before her answer. It would survive after it. When the meeting ended, Luca waited in the library adjoining the ballroom. The door remained open. On the desk lay no jewelry or gift designed to make gratitude look like consent. Only the signed accountability terms and 2 cups of coffee. May I come closer? He asked. You may. He stopped an arm's length away. I owe you more than the apology I gave that night. Then make it specific. Luca looked at the torn badge ribbon inside her evidence folder. I stepped between you and Bradley, held you in front of a ballroom, and mistook intervention for respect. Then, when my system began collapsing, I treated your competence as an emergency resource. I saw utility before I saw the woman carrying it. I gave you access only after I needed what you had built. Elena held his gaze. What changes? I do not decide what happens in your name. I do not confuse knowing where you are with having the right to follow. I ask before entering your space. Work or decisions. When we disagree professionally, your authority remains intact. When you say no personally, the conversation ends. He placed a brass key on the desk. This opens the private elevator and executive floor. It is access, not surveillance. Take it or leave it. Elena left it there. I stayed because Maya and Jonah deserved the truth. I accepted the role because the structure became real. Neither choice was a promise to you. I know I am not your reward for learning respect. Pain crossed his face, but he did not defend himself. You are not. Elena stepped closer by her own choice. What I might be interested in is dinner with a man who understands my answer can change tomorrow. When Friday, public restaurant, no private room, no security at the next table unless there is a documented threat. And you tell me first. Agreed. You do not order for me. His mouth almost curved. Then Friday is probation. Everything with me is probation until trust earns permanence. Luca lifted one hand and stopped before touching her. May I? Elena looked at the man who had once believed opening doors was the same as giving freedom. Yes. His fingers rested lightly against her cheek. He did not pull her closer. He waited. Elena closed the distance and kissed him once. Deliberately. With no audience and no debt between them. When she stepped back, he let her. That was not forgiveness for the first night. She said, "Understood. It was not a promise. Understood. It was a choice." Luca's eyes stayed on hers. "Then it is the only kind I want." Elena took the brass key before leaving. Not because it granted her entry, but because she now had authority to revoke everyone else's. At the ballroom doors, the security chief asked whether Luca's executive override should be restored. Elena approved only the permissions required for port safety and foundation operations, leaving archive deletion locked. Luca read the restriction and signed beneath it. No protest. Outside, morning light spread across Chicago, without asking who owned it. Elena walked into it, wearing the badge Bradley had tried to take, carrying a title no man could remove in a hallway, and keeping the New York contract in her bag, because love was not freedom unless leaving remained possible. Luca followed only after she looked back and invited him beside her. If someone offered to destroy your enemies, would you trust the promise, or wait to see whether they could respect your right to choose what happened next?